Thanks, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to start the introduction shortly, but first, let's just set the stage for what our discussions are going to be today. We're really focused on accelerating revenue by modernizing the service operations using AI-powered solutions and collaboration between the different teams, the sales team, pre-sales engineering, and we'll get into some of those details here in a minute. But first, let me introduce our good friend James Bowen from Microsoft, and we're going to explore how we can collaborate more effectively, especially in the manufacturing space. And James, why don't you go ahead? My name is Pierre Holzebus. First, let me introduce myself. I have about 30 years of experience running service operations, working with customers to implement service operational systems, and I'm currently the director of field service at Alithya. And today with me is James Bowen from Microsoft. So, James, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Thanks, Pierre. Happy to be here with you. Thanks for including me in this conversation today. James Bowen. I'm a principal technical specialist at Microsoft. I work on the manufacturing team and specialize in the service workloads, so field service, contact center, and customer service. I've had about 15 years experience in the dynamic space. I've had roles both in the partner channel as well as here at Microsoft. So understand it from both sides of the house of both service delivery and the product itself. So happy to be here with you today, Pierre. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, James. We look forward to the conversation. Alithya, if folks are wondering about Alithya, we're a partner, and the way that the Microsoft world works is Microsoft builds products and partners deploy and help customers implement and realize the benefit and value of those products. So we are a partner with Microsoft, one of the partners of the year. In 2023, we have lots of professionals around the world that can help deliver these types of projects. We do consulting upfront. We help with the business transformational process that has to happen often in terms of migrating systems and integrating systems. A lot of the technical kind of components, of course, we all have to be able to do that. Help manage change, do training, do some of the architecture work. We really partner with our clients to help deliver the right appropriate set of professionals to do that. And of course, Microsoft is a key partner to us, and we're talking to Microsoft today, but we're also, in these ecosystems of service operations. Sometimes we have other companies' products that come into play. So companies like Snowflake or Oracle, and we talk about integrations, and so we have teams and our partners with many of the different products that you might see in the service ecosystem. So with that, let's just start it off. Before we kind of talk about those solutions and software, I want to take this opportunity with James to really talk about the service and sales workflows inside of manufacturers, especially when it comes to manufacturer. We see this all the time. Leads and service requests come through calls and emails, and they don't really always transition seamlessly into efficient work done on time with the customer in mind. So there's always this need to kind of close that gap, to work together more efficiently. And a lot of these different teams just operate in silos, and it's just one or two meetings, then that handoff. Can we talk about that a little, James?
Yeah. It's a common challenge we see, and a lot in the frontline worker, right? I would say where the traditional use case is dispatch out, technician to do type of work. We'll call it an asset, right? That's out in the field, and you have a service contract on that, particular asset where you're doing, work for your customer. Once they get to, site location, might identify additional work that needs to be done, or even opportunities, right, to either upsell, cross-sell, additional service, or bring on new assets to that current service contract. And oftentimes what happens is you have service revenue leakage where you're not handing off what we'll call those leads or additional revenue, right, to the correct sales team to then follow up on that, right? And I know you'll get into the technology as to what that looks like and how you can start to integrate those two, parts of the business. But oftentimes, right, it's captured on a note, or it's in a note field, right, on the work order, and then it's just, well, I'll just
Yeah.
call it frankly what it is. It's left there to die, right? No one follows up on that. So again, you have revenue leakage, and then we can take it down. I know we'll get into conversation around service agreements and warranties and really what that means, but you oftentimes see where you're, doing work for a customer that's under warranty, or you haven't identified that it's under warranty, you're charging the customer. It kind of goes both ways, right? So you can get some unhappy customers on that side, and then on the other side, you have revenue leakage. So
I hear you. Yeah. So yeah, that's this kind of concept of a disconnected workflow where the sales and service team really operate in different systems often, or they kind of have different operating models, if you will. Like a technician, like you say, I'm in a work order, I'm, just doing the work. Salespeople are often in opportunity management and in email and Outlook to kind of do this work. So I think that's a good one. That because we are in different systems, it really does hinder that upsell, cross-sell opportunity because the interfaces or the experiences that the users have don't exactly translate, to that.
Right. And just to add on to that, I mean, that's the value that I'm seeing specifically with my customers, right? When we're having conversation around our offering around a single platform, right? And the capabilities to be able to integrate those two teams inside of Dynamics, right? You're on the same common data platform, but also, which I know you're going to touch on in demonstration, is the integration through Outlook and Teams, and to create those workflows and notifications, right, that happen real time to the other sides of the business, right, as that's actually happening. So I identify an opportunity on site doing work, you can identify the sales team almost automatically, right, once we identify that.
Yeah, I think often some of the times the best sellers are the technicians and the frontline folks that go out and turn the wrench and do the installation, or the crew. Not only do they represent the company in the field in terms of the quality and the high level of service and technical expertise they have, but often they also have the best ear sometimes of the customer, kind of like that system you have over there is kind of old. You should probably think of upgrading it. Or they're in the lunchroom and hear, hey, we've got a new construction project going on, out there. So they kind of often become really good resource for those upselling opportunities. So it's good stuff. So that gets down to a lot of the inefficiencies that happen around, and I'll just call it production planning. That's one of the big areas where in manufacturers, where we do have a service operations and manufacturing working together, often there is production planning that has to happen. We're building something to order, or we're taking components and we have to stage them up until we get enough stuff ready to go do the installation. So that kind of inefficiency that comes from emails just sent back and forth, or the sales team has the pre-sales discovery documents, but the service team and the production team don't really have access to some of that. So that gets into inventory issues, and of course, overbuilding or underbuilding components because they don't have really good understanding of the demand for build to order projects in manufacturing. So, and that ultimately costs, at the project level is where you start to see this project could have been more efficient or could have been less expensive to deliver if we would have had these little better collaboration, or we would have been more accurate with our timing.
Yeah, I mean, just to add quickly there, I mean, it's down to sometimes as simple as understanding when inventory arrives, right? So on work that you've had to put on hold, right? So the cost of that, starts to cascade out because we just didn't understand the status of parts were arrived, to continue work that we put on hold, and that's just integration sometimes. And just identifying that, right, having it set up correctly in a workflow business process to understand, right, that we've received, inventory.
Yeah, there's a lot, I think, too, that has to do with getting that information right in the first time inside of having that integration experience. So it isn't just, hey, a phone call or an email off to production control to find out why this is backlogged or whatever. Like if the data is there, we should be able to self-serve a large part. And then the secondary one of let's just open up, in the production area, or open up in here's the work orders for installation, or here's the opportunity. Let's open up the team chat, for that conversation. So it's not lost in email, and we're sharing it appropriately right at the point of action. Yeah, I love that stuff. The next one is that whole customer satisfaction part, and I know sellers are really sensitive to this, probably more than anybody in the organization, because they're out there making promises to deliver, and when they don't have that insight or that confidence in the systems, that ends up with delays and not getting back to the customer on time, unresolved problems that, like, I told the seller this, but it didn't get to the service tech. We wanted it blue, not green, or whatever. Like all these little nuances that come along the way, and then just the whole, like, once a seller is engaged and we do an installation, often the customer still reaches out to the seller or that sales organization to resolve other issues. Like, here's something that came up, whether that's warranty issues or just, hey, a tweak to the existing system or something like that. But can you talk about how this whole area of kind of where teams are cohesive, how that really impacts customer sat?
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of the levels there, but oftentimes what I'm seeing with customers is just the capabilities to have what I mean traditionally, right? A customer 360. I mean, being able to truly understand what's going on at any given time with a particular customer. So projects you might have ongoing, service tickets you might have out, current opportunities, right? That's arming your users, no matter where they're at in the business, whether it's sales or service side, you get that complete holistic picture. Now, to your point, when you start to integrate, teams, it's a little easier to communicate effectively and quickly, right, across the organization. So now I can just pull up my mobile device. If I notice something on, in Dynamics, I'm going to see a customer, whether it's service or sales, I can communicate with the account team, right? I understand who that is. And so quickly you can share information. I think it's very important to understand that's in the platform, right? You have that as soon as you turn it on. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just very important for, CSAT side and staying on top of it. Yeah.
I think about this whole disconnected in terms of revenue. Also, like that whole sense of we meet with a customer at the trade show, or there's initial call to action at the sale. We get engaged with the customer, and then we look at when do we get our first invoice paid from them. And I think the teams organizations really need to look at the totality of that number, as opposed to, like, the service operations, our KPIs are great. Our cost per work order is low, and this is our close rate for sales. A lot of them don't look at this kind of days outstanding kind of model, like how long does it take from that first invoice to first payment, and how long does it take from the time we sell something to the time we actually deploy it, and what are the inefficiencies in that process that don't really have anything to do with production, that are just related to people communicating effectively.
It's that, and I'll say 9 times out of 10, it's you're managing the entire process instead of what I call managing the exceptions within that process, right? So get your process down to a 80-20 rule, where we know 80%. So you're billing, right? You're recognizing revenue. We let's get the 80% out, and then let's manage that 20% exception instead of having individuals manage the entire process, right? So you can do some automation in that, to your point, so to recognize revenue faster.
Absolutely. Well, let's go on a couple other ones. One you had mentioned earlier was revenue leakage and billing delays. So talk a little bit about that. Like, teams are spending a lot of time tracking down this information. How does that relate to revenue leakage and billing delays?
Yeah, I mean, I think the example I just gave is a big one. So, you have from, revenue recognition side. So you go, a work order is assigned based on contractual agreements, whatever it may be, but you go do the work. Once we close post that inside of field service, it could sit for any number of days, right? And if you have human intervention there that has to go through and check, what was done, what products were used, right, all that. So that could take time. Where now what we're seeing is that you can 100% automate that process. So again, that 80/20 rule where 80% we might just agree we're going to push this through into invoicing to recognize revenue faster, and then 20% in intervention. With autonomous agents and the use of AI, we're seeing a lot of customers adopt that kind of process to move faster. And then the last thing I'll say is that, again, I go back to the account 360. So understanding what agreements you have with customers, no matter your role or persona, whether it's on the sales side or the service side, at your fingertips, and what's under warranty very quickly to move it along. Yeah.
Yep, we have, like we had mentioned earlier, some of the upsell, cross-sell opportunities are often missed without a lot of that. And it affects existing customers, which is really interesting. That's the, so to speak, the cheapest customer to get is sell to an existing customer. You don't have to do a lot of marketing. Just do a good job in servicing them, and we can lose those customers when we're all not on the same page. And the cost too of these inefficient operations is a pretty high. That poor communication, so duplication of work sometimes. A lot of the times when we're behind, we're then escalating, so it's more expensive to deliver those service. In the regulated industries, let's talk a little bit about that, because there's a lot of compliance that has to happen in a lot of these different manufacturers, process manufacturers that are making food and then delivering it ultimately out to the field of like retail or something like that. There's a lot of regulatory stuff that comes along with that. And so what are some of the things you think reputation wise around regulation that can be a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, you see it a lot with within the manufacturing lines, right? With you're producing or you're making things that you have to be configured in a certain way, right? And you have to have certain certifications as you're manufacturing those. So that's one, right, where you might run into some regulatory issues. And then down to the actual technicians of doing the work. There's specific certs that you have to keep up with, on your technicians, and making sure that they're up to date so they can do the work in a timely fashion, right? And you're keeping those contracts true. There's also types of work that you do. If you remove certain pieces of equipment, that has to be registered at that asset level and at that BOM level. I know we're getting a little deep there and technical, but it's very important to make sure that as an organization, you understand that you're tracking that serialization. If it's gases, right, and all that kind of stuff, you're tracking what was put in, what was put out. So that's all doable, right, inside of Dynamics and field service, at tracking the asset, the component level, the serialization, and what the actual makeup of that BOM once you're following it, right, as you're pulling on and off different components of that asset.
Nice. Yeah, I think a lot of this is very helpful for the solutioning that has that ability to keep track of making sure we're following the exact procedures that have been established by regulation. We're sending people out that have their certifications in regulations, and whether that's a medical device manufacturer or anybody that's in the kind of FDA type of chain of custody, keeping track of everything is so critical and important. All right, so there's a couple other ones around time tracking down order details, customer churn, and then loss of like technicians being prepared for going out to do that work. Can you talk a little bit about that? Service teams lack a lot of that sales team data, and how that directly affects cash flow. So from the view of the technical team, like doing that, like if they're not in the loop when it comes to the sales side, what are some of the key areas that really impact that cash flow and profitability?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I go back to the sharing of knowledge and sharing of data, and it's important to the interconnectivity, right? I think that's what we're seeing, the theme here, within what we're talking about. But technicians understanding what might be in pipeline. So if there's big projects, right, that are coming along. So let's think of a facility that might be being extended upon or being developed for a customer, and you're going and doing and servicing assets, right, HVAC units, whatever that high value asset might be. It's important to understand, right, that that's coming. I mean, not only for conversation, but so the technicians, as you mentioned before, there's most of the time for service organizations, the best seller, because they're boots on the ground, they're hearing exactly what's going on. But your brand, right, is front facing with those technicians, and they're able to extend that. But I think it's if you have a technician that walks in and they have no clue, and you're talking to an executive or a upper level manager on, and they bring it up, hey, yeah, look, we're looking for this new project. We have a bid out to your company to help service our assets, and they have no clue. That's probably a problem, right? And not understanding, yeah.
Yeah. So, just to summarize what we're talking about, one of the biggest, financial risks we have is revenue leakage and billing delays. And when invoices are delayed, cash flow slows down, making it harder to forecast revenue and maintain that stability that we need. A lot of the manual, like double entry stuff, when we're not integrated, leads to errors and underbilling. And as we talked about, these operational inefficiencies really drive up costs, which is not great. Spending unnecessary time fixing these discrepancies and kind of reconciling, if you will, not just the financial stuff, but the customer's expectations. And so those really affect customer trust. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. I'll die on this hill, that we have great products as manufacturers, but at the end of the day, what's the most important asset we have is customers, because without them, we're dead in the water. You need customers. That's the most important asset we have. That's pretty. All right. Well, let's talk about the solutioning of this from a Microsoft perspective. What are some of the different kind of ways that this team looks at the solution from a Microsoft perspective? Could you walk us through maybe some of Microsoft's approach to integrating sales engagement across these different service events that might occur when projects maybe originate in like an ERP, or how do the sales teams get involved early in planning to make sure that we're aligned and coordinated?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think from a field service and an ERP perspective, right? We at Microsoft, we go at it, together as one solution. Being a common data, application, and we're sharing data across the the stack. So I'm in one right now with a customer that's F&O and CRM sales and field service, and we definitely go at it as a cohesive solution, where most customers look at it traditionally as an ERP, right, solution, where it's, for us, it's all encompassing, and we'll call it a one solution, understanding customer business process, right, end to end. So yeah, we attack it as as one solution and go to market that way. And you can see, I like how you have it identified, down here in the different applications that each one of these levels. What I'll say is what I'm seeing is the introduction of Copilot and AI throughout all of these applications, and we're finding ways to. I know we've had revenue leakage and the integration of sales and service teams here. What we're seeing is that being the way that these teams can really be integrated, right, and understand information across the entire business unit. So, F&O, ERP data, and I'm on the service side. If I want to engage Copilot and understand that information, I can now do that, right, and quickly get wait times, hold times, all that. So I would say that's probably what I'm seeing the most, blended across all of this. All of these entire swim lanes, right, as to where you can start to integrate. And I like how you have it on all this, because it's absolutely true.
Yep. I think with one of the pieces is thinking about some of these end-to-end workflows where this kind of lead to service type of thing, where we get an email that comes in, and I'll show this in a demo here in a minute, but this whole thing of there's just a little button that somehow magically creates a work order from an email without having to have this very specific structure or making a customer go to to like a web page or something like that, or call in the contact center to create a case so we get a work order out. Like this conversion to me seems really focused on productivity and just
Yep.
the speed of action that we do.
100% true. And again, with what we're seeing, we're going to see this evolve and change, right? From this here, this is amazing. But what we're going to start to see it, with Copilot and with AI, get 100% smarter on how we're intaking all of this, right? From the front end, not only in Outlook, but any channel, right, that you might choose from how you're engaging with your customer. But 100%, this gets it off the ground and scheduled to a technician almost immediately, right? You can, for CSAT, a bunch of different reasons.
I see Microsoft really strengthening the collaboration by just really going all in field service around Teams.
Yeah.
And how there's new user interfaces for Teams, and really fewer teams benefit more than sales. Sales engineering, deployment, service teams, and post-installation teams all working together from that kind of pre-sales to executions process. Like there's a lot of information workers, in that space trying to kind of collaborate together, and this whole thing like being able to do a pre-sales walkthrough or an inspection, tools like remote assistance, or which I think you guys are renaming that to spatial annotations or something like that. All that embedded and working together with field service is really an amazing kind of, let's say, thumbs up, so to speak, or an endorsement on how Teams has been such an important part of this. Because I think of the one feature where you're able to go into a work order and just open up a Teams chat right from a work order,
Yep.
right? And I can, like, from a work order, the technician's experience on the mobile then just becomes, pretty seamless for the technician.
Seamless. Yeah.
It's very seamless, pretty amazing. The AI powered scheduling is another one, and how that, like, we think of, I just pulled this view up because this represents what a lot of companies have to deal with. I've got, 20 people, 30 people in an office, and, we've got 4 or 5 work orders per day for those technicians. This is just one day's worth of work for someone to do and dispatch, and how AI can really help lift this process. Talk a little bit about the where service and AI come together around scheduling. How does Microsoft leverage the AI kind of components?
Yeah, so we're in, currently we're in a private preview for the autonomous agent for scheduling, and we'll see it go public preview next month, I believe, for the autonomous scheduling agent. So I like to say, think of it, if anyone who's familiar with RSO, right, and the resource scheduling optimization, let's think of it now on true steroids, right, and the growth, what you'll be able to do with it. So if we think of, all of the work orders, everything you have going on in the system, all of that data, that autonomous agent looking at that, right? So you have all of your preventative work scheduled out. Now the agent's going to do really the work for you and understanding if there will be delays, right? Based on your technician's work that they're doing currently, any sort of attributes that are out there, the autonomous agent's going to look at that and then identify to you. You probably want to look at these 3 technicians, right? Because of these 5 events, do you want to reshuffle this work? And so it's going to start to serve you up, right? Information on how you need to be looking at your world, as well as the capabilities to schedule. You'll be able to do this single resource as well as all of your, workforce. So lots of greatness coming with the scheduling agent.
Yeah, I remember when we got to this particular view in Dynamics a few years back with a very rationalized, showing travel time, understanding what the routes are for everybody. And I think, and now we have that. It's like, whoa, this is really overwhelming. This is an overwhelming thing for, a team to kind of manage and look at efficiencies. How do I make sense? Now I understand it, I make sense of it, but how do I optimize this? How do I make it better? So that's the part that I think is very, very interesting. The other part is scheduling, I think, and I'll show you in a demo here in a sec, kind of how the it's more democratic than it used to be. We have rules that establish where people go, what times, all sorts of kind of rules inside of the system that do that. But in the past, we've always relegated the actual booking to a dispatcher, a dedicated role. And now we're kind of democratizing that using AI, kind of helping it kind of go out and find the right people in the right slots without having to wait for a day or so for it to go into a queue and then have a dispatcher look at it and kind of go, all right, James is the right resource for it. I think it's pretty amazing.
Yep.
And the whole automation around inside of the systems around contracts, that's another part, I think, that from a solution standpoint, I think Microsoft has established a value here for basically being able to look at service execution based on the time commitments that we've given to customers. Like every 3 months, we're going to come out and, inspect that, and the system generates the appropriate work order, and the system schedules the appropriate people to go out and do the work. But also we can pay attention to the conditions of assets within the system to go after X amount of, actuations. We're going to go out and do work on it. So I think it's really fascinating.
I think you're nailing what I think is going to be one of the biggest advancements we'll see right around that. And your connected equipment, IoT, the attributes on those equipment paired with service contracts, and then your scheduling, right? I think that piece of it is where we're going to see the most advancement.
I don't have a case study in here, but folks, one of the published case studies that Microsoft have is Lexmark. And I think of Lexmark as really a great example of that, where obviously there's, now it's part of Xerox. They just are getting bought by Xerox, actually. And a big part of it is this integration that Microsoft has worked on and the team has built out there around conditions-based maintenance, where we are just out there fixing a printer, before it has to break, and charging based on usage as opposed to just a one-time cost. So it's really amazing to maximizing the revenue opportunity and keeping customers super happy at the same time. It's pretty amazing when they're integrated.
Last thing I'll say on that, and I know we want to move into demo, but what Lexmark, they're able to crack the nut on, the opportunity creation of that as well, right? So think about not just the service side, but connected printers and creating, opportunities based on number of copies and ink and automatically sending out, right? And the sales side of it, right? Through connectivity. So you can also create new revenue streams, right? Not only for the service side, but also, your opportunities and revenue.
Excellent. That's so cool. That is so cool. All right. Well, I wanted to show a few things. James, chime in if you want on any of this, but I want to show everybody kind of how these things work together in the application. So the first scenario I put together was with Molly. She starts her day in teams and she manages the technical team. So she's kind of in project meetings and working to coordinate scopes and schedules and tasks with the sales organization and customers all day. So this is kind of her main tool that she's using. And as we can see, we can ask a question like, what are all the work orders that are urgent today that might be unscheduled? And it'll give us that list directly right in, Copilot, because it's connected into field service for all of that data. And then there is a field service kind of user interface now inside of Teams. So Molly can go right in, look up a work order, just type in that number, look it up, and then it'll show the work order. It shows it as unscheduled. So she's in that meeting with the sales team going, here we have some backlogged work orders. Are we ready to go ahead and get them scheduled? The team is like, yep, customer's ready. Let's get it done. Right in that Teams experience, she's able to go and open the work order and click on the schedule button. And this is where Copilot is going out. That little scheduling agent in the background is going and finding the right technician. So it's giving Molly, here's all of the different time slots that are available, the different resources that met the criteria of the work order. And we can go ahead and just click the schedule button, and now we're good to go. It's scheduled. So she can stay inside of Teams without having, again, to kind of call up the dispatch team and go, or reach out to David, are you available tomorrow? Right in Teams, we're able to make that commitment to the customer and to the sales organization that it is. Now, Veronica, she is the person that manages the schedule. She's a dispatcher for one of those teams. So she's able to look at that schedule board and review. This is the work that's committed to the different resources that are in there. That, for example, Molly's work order would show up here for David. And upon reflection, she might go, David's calling in sick, or David said he was going to go home early today, something on that order. And then she's just able to drag and drop that work order onto another individual. So, the work schedule board inside of the system is super sophisticated and accommodating times and notifications. So when that event occurs, the mobile technician is able to see that right on their phone. Like, work order goes away from one tech, and now it shows up on the next technician's area. Now, one of the things that's really cool that Microsoft just added recently is the use of Copilot in the thing. And we had talked about the concept of technicians being ready, like the prep. And so they're just going from work to work, not necessarily knowing what's coming next all the time. And so Copilot, we've all messed around with this. It's really good to summarize stuff, isn't it? It's just really great to just concisely go get a bunch of data, take a long bunch of paragraph, and then just give me back one couple sentences on the summary of what this is. And so it's able to summarize the work orders really quickly, that it was when it was created, what's kind of the expectation, what am I supposed to do while I'm out there? And Copilot does that. And so, I don't have to send an email to a technician or call them up and say, or put a note in the field, in the description field. All right, now what you're going to do when you get out there is all of these things. It's just done through Copilot automatically, which is really sweet. Now, on the work order, of course, it's all geospatial. So it understands where the technician is. It advertises the GPS location back to the schedule board, so we know where people are. And the technician, right in the work order, can click to get directions to where I got to go next. And it's aware of the traffic and the current conditions, if the bridge is out, all of that kind of stuff, where I can go to do the work that I need to do. The other kind of component, which is pretty cool, I put some animation around this particular one here, is on the work order are tasks that you have to do when you go out and do the work. And that, to your point about regulatory or structured work, like you literally have to do it this exact steps in these exact order, and you have to take readings along the way. And so this gives you a very guided process. We have a couple different solutions, we have a product called Guides that literally does that. It has branching logic that lets you put in, a value for the reading. And then if the reading is inaccurate or the reading is outside of bounds, it, has some branching logic. You need to do this next. So I think this is really helpful to understand that the app not just says, go and do the work, but it gives that technician kind of very structured process for how the work needs to be done. And in these regulated industries, again, if we're in anything with FDA or medical devices or any food related stuff, anything that cosmetics, all that kind of stuff, all requires a tremendous amount of detail in terms of repairs have to be done in a very exact way. Things have to be read in a very specific way. And so I think this is really kind of a cool thing that we've added. And that stuff shows up right in, again, the field service application. Now, this is a little bit of an evolution that Microsoft is going through right now with, they had a product and have a product called Remote Assist. And I think it's getting renamed, James, called Spatial Annotations. There was a little blog article about this recently. But it's effectively the same or similar kind of functionality. But right from the mobile device, the technician is able to call in to the expert, let's say one of the product engineers or somebody that built the thing, and I'm out here doing the installation and something's not quite lined up. Can you help me while I'm out here? And so this is that first time fix rate, like I'm on site. A lot of customers in this space are flying a technician, meeting the equipment out there. We have a team of people, so it's not like we can just go, oh, we'll fix it later. Like it needs answers now and today. And so I love this functionality to be able to phone a friend and not just have a phone conversation, but literally turn the camera around, point at the equipment that we're looking at, and have Marcus, here's our expert here, who may be the engineer that designed this product, kind of go, no, you got to, I'm pointing to the right wire that you have to change or whatnot. Like you're having a very significant conversation and having good impact.
Just to add there, Pierre, I'm not sure where we'll land with the name. We're Microsoft after all. You know how we like to do with that. But what we've understood, right, is pulling it into teams and making it more of an easier user experience, better user experience. So it'd be right inside of teams now, and you're integrating again the other workloads, right, very quickly. So if you need to find your expert very quickly, you're not having to change the experience right from remote assist to teams. So should see a lot of productivity and a lot of ease of use bringing it back into teams. Same experience, just in teams.
Yep. I love that part. And then the other part of Copilot being used for the technician in the mobile is this part. Again, so we have this very structured set of work tasks that are required to be completed, like when I arrived, when I left, what are the specific tasks that I performed? And I literally need somebody to check the box for compliance requirements, an auditable kind of trail that has to happen of when things were done. How much did we do this? Did it not get done? Around the work order. And so that we can use Copilot now. It understands the intent. It translates all of that then to all those fields and tasks inside of the work order. So I don't have to go and open up every one of the individual things and check them off. I can just say, literally, I've done these 5 things, and it will interpret that and then complete those for me and basically do the check boxes for me. So I think that's a pretty kind of novel use of this, and I think a lot of people have been asking for this for years and years. Actually, it's one thing to take a note or to put it in a note field, but it's another thing to do at this level. So I think that's pretty cool. Lastly, it's the Outlook, and we talked about Outlook integration. So Molly is one of those account reps, and she's able to get an email here from Claudia from Fabricam. And so instead of, again, having to go and forward that email to a dispatcher and have them create a work order, she's literally right in Outlook creating a work order. The system maps the text that's in there. It goes, as you can see, it looked up the customer. It's putting all of that into a work order, and we've created a work order in the system. And then Molly can also go and schedule, again, with all those rules, just like we saw in Teams. We can see David's the guy. It shows how much time it's going to take to deliver. It's going to 20 minutes drive. I can commit to the customer. There's even a little prompt in that to show what the response to the customer, saying, here's the scheduled information, and so will be out there tomorrow. And again, once that's completed, it literally just sends it to the field service mobile application for the technician. So it just shortens that entire time, given the right amount of work that we have in the system. Folks are really shortening down that the handoff time that it takes to get things done. All right. Well, with that said, let's wrap it up, James. Let's talk a few about these things that we talked about. Real-time collaboration in teams really helps create opportunity for us to work together better, to have better communications across projects. and customer installation projects that we're doing, and at the same time leveraging the tech that is right out of the box. We've seen how AI powered scheduling is really helping the service delivery team ensure that the right technician with the right skill arrives at the right job at the right time, eliminating a lot of that manual scheduling inefficiencies. Businesses are really reducing that downtime and optimizing the resources and allocating all of those extra time to improve response times. Do you see this as the kind of the big area, James, for investments for Microsoft around AI? Obviously, it's such a buzzword right now.
Yeah, I mean, for field service, yeah, it's definitely a big investment area. And we'll see a lot coming in the next month, to market and to public to be able to read on and actually try it out, once we get to preview. But yeah, I mean, I think not only for, your entire organization scheduling, right, the work, but think about it in your single resource example that you gave, right? So you showed a way to, move a work order up. Think of a world where now as a scheduler, I'm going to get notified in a pane somewhere on that schedule board to say, hey, David called out, you need to move this work. Do you want to move it to this resource because they're available, right? So like, you're more answering yes, no questions, do this for me, right? So that's definitely from an investment perspective for sure. But it'd be a little bit different world, a better world, right? From a productivity perspective that we'll be able to live in.
We saw how some of the invoicing and contract renewals and those types of things can really help capture revenue. So,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of manual intervention required. Like things can be kind of automated on the back end around renewals and making sure that we're getting the revenue when we need it.
Yep.
The other part is just kind of giving that impact around service operation bottlenecks, really that end-to-end process and getting that insight. Like the thing that I find so interesting about this platform is that effectively it's real time. Like it's not like very batchy. Like when I look at the schedule board, that's the schedule board. If I have a question, I'm in Teams, I'm asking that question. It's live. There's not a lot of, hey, can we wait till tomorrow? We'll get the information tomorrow. I think that's pretty amazing. One thing I also wanted to mention to folks looking, Jim and I know that field service has been around for 10 years or so, and it's impressive where Microsoft sits and all of the major industry analysts says, Jim, do you have any final words that you'd like to share with the team before we finish up for the day?
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you for having me. This has been fun. I've enjoyed the conversation. I think we've seen tremendous growth in the last 10 years. And I think these reports kind of, speak for themselves, right, on how the market's viewing Dynamics, field service specifically, but also as a platform solution. I think what I've seen is now here, doing this for 15 years, right? 10 plus with field service now, and now customers actually know that field service is real within Microsoft. So I think that's the proof, right? Sure. That it's that it's working where before they didn't. But yeah, no, I mean, I think I would encourage everyone to go out and take a look at these reports and read up on where we're investing at Microsoft, and not only field service but AI, and as it pertains to field service specifically, and some of the metrics and numbers we're seeing there.
Very exciting. Well, it's as we close, if you want to take some next steps with us and the team at Microsoft, one of the things that we encourage you to do is envisioning workshop. We work with those teams to identify opportunities for automation and integration and all the optimization that we talked about, tailored to your specific business needs. It's really your chance to see firsthand how a connected sales and service model really could improve service operations and performance. So spots for these engagements are limited, but don't wait. You can go ahead and schedule a discovery call and we'll unlock that full potential within your service operations. And so with that said, I'd like to thank you all. Again, Alithya is here to help you identify, acquire, and retain some of the most valuable assets you have, which again is customers. So again, thank you so much, and have a great day, everybody.